Hello, this is John Nix. I'm professor of voice and voice pedagogy at the University of Texas at San Antonio in the US. I'm sorry we were not be able to be together in Edinburgh for the conference, but hopefully you'll find this online presentation informative for your teaching and singing. I have my little school spirit shirt on here. So my presentation is entitled Varying Vowels with SOVTs. Does it make a difference? And I'm going to start sharing my screen here. There we go. So again, the title of the presentation is Varying Vowels with SOVTs, Does it make a difference? So we're going to be talking about SOVTs in general, and I'm going to discuss two of them in greater detail. The open mouth hum or standing wave exercise, which was first developed by Burton Coffin at the University of Colorado in the 1960s. And it's now known as a manually occluded vocal tract posture, and singing through a drinking or stirring straw. I was going to talk about singing into a coffee cup with a small opening at one end, but due to the COVID-19 outbreak, I wasn't able to collect data from many human subjects. So anyway, on with the show. So let's just briefly review some of the semi-occluded vocal tract postures that singing teachers often use. I'm going to demonstrate them as I go along, and I know some folks may use different terms to describe these exercises, so that's why I'm demonstrating them, just so how I describe them and call them is very clear to you. I want to add that during this pandemic, due to the ability of many of these postures to aerosolize saliva, I would not recommend using them in a teaching situation now. In private practice in your own home where only you sing is probably fine, so long as it's not a shared practice space. But otherwise, it's best that we avoid the risk of potentially spreading the virus. First of all, there's humming. There's also vocalizing on a voiced fricative consonant. So, for example, on a Z, then we have the lip trill or lip buzz. Another one is the raspberry or Bronx cheer. So you can think of that as the lip buzz with the tongue out as well. That one has a particularly high spit factor, so one to really avoid doing right now with students, that's for sure. Straw phonation is next. Let me grab my straw. You can pinch your nostrils shut to make sure you aren't humming. And you can also do it with your tongue out. So, you can also put the end of a straw into a cup or a glass or a bottle of water for some bubbly, messy fun. And the length of the straw is not nearly as important as the diameter of the straw. So the smaller the straw in terms of diameter, the more resistance it's going to provide. Cup phonation is another variation. You take a cup, you poke a hole down in the bottom of it, and you put it up against your mouth and make sure it seals around your mouth. Okay, and the smaller the hole, just like the smaller the diameter of the straw, the more restrictive it is of the airflow. There's also the bilabial fricative, which can be done with a finger against the lips. Or as my mentor Barbara Doscher used to call, there's a sleepy owl. And last, there's what Burton Coffin called the open mouth hum. And my teacher, who was his student, Barbara Doscher, called it the standing wave exercise. And a couple of years ago, I showed it to Ingo Tietze, and he said we should call it the manually, get it? Manually occluded vocal tract. So posture. So you open your mouth like you're going to say ah, And then using the web of your hand, you cover your open mouth, completely sealing it shut with the web of your hand. So you can breathe out your nose. So I did a series of vowels. So these are all SOVTs, where you kind of put a lid on the pot, so to speak. The vocal tract is partly occluded while you vocalize. SOVTs have become accepted as an essential part of the toolbox for many singing teachers, and there are lots of benefits for them. Physiologically, the vocal folds tend to cut off the flow of the air very quickly, and that gives you a lot of high frequencies without a lot of impact force when you're singing with a semi-occluded posture. There's also evidence that it narrows that outlet of the larynx, the epilaryngeal area, which may help boost in the singer's formant cluster in terms of your acoustical output. Of course, there's a breath management aspect. By having some resistance downstream, it seems to enable us to sing for a long time on one breath. It also, because you've got kind of the pressure above the vocal folds and the pressure below the vocal folds are very high, the vocal folds themselves actually contact very, very lightly. You might think they kind of get squeezed, but they actually don't. The SOVTs encourage kind of a head-voice sensation. It helps us couple the vibration of the upper surface of our vocal folds with those acoustical pressures above the glottis. And there's also been some research that shows that the ratio of the TA that bulks up, the vocal fold, and the cricothyroid, which stretches it long ways, that you get a little higher activation of TA to CT during their use and then after their use. In the studio, of course, there's a sensation of increased or more steady respiratory support. Again, you've got that resistance. It's kind of a resistance workout. There's also sensations of vibration in the orofacial area rather than maybe down in your throat or neck. Some of them, particularly the lip bubble and the raspberry, it's a good way to release some of those habitual tensions people may have. And of course, also you have to be a little more uninhibited in doing those more extroverted semi-occluded postures. Because you need to have kind of a little back pressure inside your upper part of your vocal tract, your soft palate will go up on things like the lip bubble and the raspberry. That's certainly not the case for using like a nasal. Fronting your tongue, using the straw with your tongue out, or the raspberry, or some of the consonants, z, a z, or an n, all of those things front your tongue. And some of the SOVTs may encourage a lower laryngeal position, and we'll talk about that in just a few moments. But for some of those SOVTs, if you're trying these out at home while you're listening to me, you can approximate vowels while you do them. You can approximate or think at least some vowels while doing most of the ones that I mentioned. But what vowels should be used with SOVTs which allow a vocalist to approximate vowels? Are there more advantageous ones to use, and why? Should the same vowels be used for work with a straw versus work with a lip trill, or doing the bilabial fricative, or doing the manually occluded vocal tract? Should the same vowels be used for treble and bass voices? Should the same vowels be used at all pitch levels? So we're going to talk through a couple of these things. So I'm going to be drawing on studio experience and some lab research to kind of answer these questions and provide you with a little practical guidance for the studio. So our vocal tract has different resonance frequencies depending on how it's shaped. And when we're vocalizing, we want to stay on the lower side of those resonances. So if this is like the peak of the resonance, you'd want to stay on the upslope to the peak um, as much as we can. It's in that zone that the acoustics of our vocal tract assist in maintaining the vocal fold vibration. When we use a semi-occluded vocal tract posture, like singing into a straw, one of the things that happens is the first resonance peak is lowered a lot. I mean, we're talking down below 200 hertz. Another thing that may happen is that the area just above the vocal folds, that epilaryngeal area, is narrowed, and we talked about that on a previous slide. That's not true for everyone. For example, it doesn't typically do so for me. I've been scoped a number of times while I'm singing with a straw and lip bubbling and raspberry, and with the straw, I definitely did not get the epilaryngeal narrowing, but other people do. So anyway, after thinking about this, I kind of had an aha moment. When we do these occlusions, the resonances of the vocal tract tend to lower, but especially that first one. So we shouldn't worry about what the first vowel resonance is, which is contrary to a lot of what we do when we're talking about vowel modification for treble singing when you actually have your mouth open. Essentially what we've done is like that resonance has now shifted way down, so we've kind of hopped over it. And what is more important is like where's the location of that next resonance so that we can stay on the upslope of it. That way we can stay on that lower side of the resonance peak and take advantage of that assistance to the vibration of our vocal folds. I've done a couple of studies. One was with my former grad student, Sarah Miga. We were looking at the hand over the mouth one, the manually occluded vocal tract posture. And I've also done a similar experiment using the same basic protocol, but with the drinking straws. So this slide is using Voce Vista. And so what I did is I sang the vowel ah and dropped into fry. So ah, and that helps us see where the resonances are. And then doing it and you'll notice, I'm going to get my mouse here, you'll notice this first resonance peak is there at 676, and now it's way, way down here. And this second resonance peak is actually shifted up, and that's partly due to the fact that in doing this, my soft palate is lowered. So with the MOVT, you get the impact of the oral occlusion lowering the first resonance, but then the nasal port opening affects things some other ways. Here is two more images. This time it's a female subject singing an E vowel. There she's singing and then she dropped into fry. And so she's got a resonance here, and then this is her second and third resonances are clustered close enough together where we get a really broad peak. And then this is the fourth one. Then when she did it that way, we get a very complex, lots of different peaks and valleys here. But this is due to not only that shifting down of the first resonance, but also, again, the nasal port being opened. But there aren't any big, where it drops down to zero. Even though you do have some hills and valleys, you don't have a big moment where it drops down to zero. We also looked at what happens when you use that MOVT as a lead-in to a sung vowel like this. I'm going to sing an A vowel. This is a way you might typically use it in a studio if you're following some of what Burton Coffin advocated. We wondered if some of the lowering of resonances and clustering of them during the MOVT posture would transfer over into the normal singing, and in some cases it did, and in some cases it didn't. Here's an oo vowel, and then here's an e vowel. You can see, when there's the occlusion, everything drops much lower and they're closer together, and then they open back up afterwards. In this next study, been looking at what happens to those resonance frequencies when you sing through a straw. This first one is of a soprano singing an oo vowel. So here she's singing and she dropped into fry, and you can see first peak there and second one. And then when she did it through the straw, and you can see this shifted down. I don't have the exact figure how much it shifted down, but a couple of 100 hertz. And then the second one has dropped a bit. And then this third one has really come down quite a bit. This is a male doing an oo vowel. Actually, this is me. And rather than using the fry, which tends to give a fairly weak signal, doing a glissando, that's an E vowel, and then we took a long-term average spectrum and able to see where those resonance peaks are a little bit clearer. So, enough of the science. Let's talk about some practical things. From my studio experience, I found it helpful to use the oo and the o and the and the mixed vowels with the lip buzz for my male students. This seems to encourage a stable, slightly lowered laryngeal position. Let me demo using some different vowels while buzzing. So I did E, A, O. Now, here's a descending scale on a lip buzz, and this time I'm going to think ooh. I'm not sure how clearly my larynx is visible on the image here. But at any rate, I can feel during the lip bubble it's dropped, and by thinking ooh, it tends to sit just a little bit lower. So I'll use either oo or o, or the two mixed vowels, like in schön, or the OE as in like je in French. And I'll just lightly have my male students monitor with their finger where their larynx is sitting. With treble voices, I find using a during the lip bubble to be most helpful. Again, you have to remember that they're singing quite a bit higher. It was Barbara Doscher's habit to use a during lip bubble or the raspberry in the upper passaggio with treble voices, and I agree. Remembering the a vowel is a front vowel, and so that second resonance is still fairly high, so you're able to stay on that upslope of the second resonance. I'd also like to mention there are kind of three different levels of raspberries, at least that's how Barbara Doscher used to talk about it, in terms of lower to higher breath pressure. And again, I'm using her pet names for them. There's the moped, which is a fairly high flow and not a lot of pressure, and then a dirt bike, a little more resistance, so the pressure's a little higher, still keeping the flow as high as I can, and then the Harley Davidson, which has a higher subglottic breath pressure, but still the high flow. And that would be for high energy, full voiced singing up in the upper passaggio for a treble voice. With the MOVT, that's the vowel end of the hand, it's been my experience the front vowels work best for this, especially for female treble voices. If you're familiar with Burton Coffin's books, Sounds of Singing and Overtones of Bel Canto, he has literally over 100 exercise variations using, using this vowel end of the hand. Male and bass voices may find success using front vowels during the MOVT as a lead into, say, a scale on a back vowel. So for instance, I'm going to do an A into my hand, and then I'm going to transition onto an O vowel when I take my hand away. So I'm doing the A into my hand. And then as I take my hand away, I switch. So A and O both have about the same in terms of the location frequency wise of their first resonance, but the second resonance, which is the one we're really concerned about when we're occluded like this, is much higher for A, and that's why choosing to use it when I'm occluded. Female treble voices can do similar things, and you can also do sirens on the front vowels. Particularly find this helpful for people helping them access whistle register or flageolet register, depending on your terminology. So here I'm going to do an A into my hand. And of course, I'm just using falsetto to demonstrate. Now here's an A. And here's E. So in each case, A and A and E, all of them have relatively high second resonance for that vowel. It's the highest for E, and they lower slightly as you go from E to A to A. And honestly, I will try all three with a student and say, which one's giving you the most freedom? I found oo to be helpful for male and bass voices for larynx position using the straw. Students say they feel, kind of open and very spacious internally when they do this, although when they're doing that, they're probably actually just feeling where the acoustical pressures are high in their vocal tract, and actually the acoustical pressures are high where things are narrow. So where we think we're open, we're actually narrow. But that may not need to explain that to your students. I'm not one to, tell students, okay, you need to narrow your vocal tract. That's usually kind of counterintuitive. Anyway, so I'm going to demonstrate here. I'm doing an oo through the straw. Again, you can do different vowels. You can hear E, A, O, U. But for males, I'll, if I'm particularly attending to laryngeal height and things like that, probably do oo. If I had a high baritone or tenor voice and we wanted to do some sirening around, I might use an E vowel. Because that's going to give us the widest frequency range without any noticeable blips, again, because that second resonance of the E vowel is really quite high. For the females, about from up to about C5, so C4 being middle C, using the E vowel on straw phonation, and above that probably A, and again just to stay on that inertive upslope of that second resonance. I'll also have my students take their other hand and place it past the end of the straw, because sometimes when they're doing stuff with a straw, I feel like they need to really continue to think flow. And just by having their hand there, they can feel that airflow going out the end of the straw. Um, I also, on occasion, will have my students sing, a passage from their repertoire and do the vowels that are in the text while they're singing through their straw. So, if we were going to do Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know, you know, and some find that more beneficial than others. I find high sopranos find that helpful on middle voice passages in their rep. Um, Keep things flexible. If a student finds it's helpful, it's worth a try. Doing things with the bilabial fricative with your finger up against your lips. It's been my experience that E or A works really well on sirens for treble voices. And again, the theory is we're riding up on that high second resonance of these vowels. We're staying on below the peak of that resonance. For me, as a male, that feels very much like singing through the straw. You could also do that as a lead-in into a vocalese. So, something like that. For male voices, bass voices, I might use one of the more close rounded vowels. Again, this is for laryngeal position. So some take-home points. Vowels used during the SOVTs should be chosen according to the frequency range that you're singing. Um, you can also choose those vowels based upon, particularly with your male singers, to affect some changes in their laryngeal height just to keep it stable, and to promote some greater freedom in the vocal tract. And we're using the vowels that have that higher second resonance, so that's the E, the I, A, and A, to stay on that upslope of that second resonance, and therefore getting the benefit of having that vocal tract innertance, which assists in sustaining the vocal fold oscillation. Here's my contact information. I also have a number of videos on YouTube which show me demonstrating some of these postures, as well as some examples of my teaching both male and female students, and I'd be delighted if you found them helpful. And you can just search by my name and they should come up. And as always, my contact information is here. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have via email. It's been a real privilege to visit with you all, and best wishes to everyone, and stay healthy.